I would like to start saying thank you very much to all of you, because there is a very, very hard time. This time I help us to now that we in Spain used to call the siesta time. So I hope to be not so boring and nobody finds the conference sleeping. Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Internet Interdisciplinary Institute of the University of Catalonia, and to the Internet Oxford Institute from the Oxford University. I'm very, very happy being here, and it's an honor for me being here. Well, I would like to talk. Well, first of all, I will try to know how is it working. Okay, I would like to talk about social networks, about virtual communities as a new environment for a new consumer. So, however, first of all, I have to say that here I'm coming not to give answers. Here I'm coming just mainly to give questions. So to talk about future research lines that should be developed in this new context, which are virtual social networks. I know that many of you are looking for new research lines, and I would like to to persuade you to go further in this research line. Well, let me start talking about a bit of the internet. Nowadays, on the internet, we can find every kind of products. It's evident. Internet is progressively being used for taking purchasing decisions in different kind of things. However, it is clear that the internet is a different purchasing context. There is a lot of information. It is clear in the different presentations, previous presentation we have here about this. It is easy to try to compare products, prices, and so on. There is no personal relationships through the internet. Well, it's a personalized relationship with the data that we are managing in the internet, but there is not a physical contact. And also in this case, the relation between the buyer and the seller is not existing, the direct relation. So the suggestions made by the retailer are not so important as it is in the offline world. And from marketing point of view, we can say that we need to analyze what is different in this new environment, what are the main implications of these differences, and how this change affects to the consumer behavior, and especially to the marketing opportunities that we are having in this context. Well, it is clear that in addition, internet is a medium to promote knowledge between consumers. However, it is not just a distribution channel. Consumers, in fact, are progressively being using this channel as a source of information. Well, it is evident everybody now has been participating in different chats, discussion groups, and so on. These chats and discussion groups are being used in order to establish in contact with other users to share their experience, in order to sharing information about new products which are just being launched to the market and nobody has previous experience with them. Even if you go to the store, they do not have it, and you are expecting to the launching of this new product, and you want to be the first in order to know what are the characteristics of the product. Well, there is a couple of videos that I think we have no time to see, but there is a couple of videos. For example, I would like to talk about a video, a commercial presentation of a device, in which you can see which are the main activities that you can perform, you can conduct, for example, with a mobile phone. But obviously, commercial presentations are presentations in which they are trying to sell in the product, but we do not have the direct touch of the consumer with the product. It is more interesting, for example, to pay attention to the presentation made by the own user. People working with the mobile phone in the bar, showing you what you can do with this kind of device. Obviously, you think, well, it is easy, I can do it by myself as well. Obviously, we can say that this context has motivated, this context of sharing information, sharing resources, has motivated the creation of social networks or virtual communities, has motivated the great success of these devices. Well, let's talk about the growing importance of virtual communities. Well, virtual communities are an incomparable medium in order to allow interaction between individuals and exchange of knowledge and experiences. Virtual communities are increasing their importance for marketers and researchers, mainly because two main reasons. Because they influence real consumer behavior, and it has been proved before, and also because they allow to obtain important information about potential users. So what are their needs, what are their desires, what are the interests of some specific groups of people? Because in each virtual social networks that we are having just is a market segment, very specific market segment of people talking about one of their preferences, the product itself. Well, the question is, what is a community? Can you give us any more information? So we can say that the concept of virtual community is almost as old as the internet. They became very useful in 19th thanks to the chats, the systems of transmission of information, such as the instant message systems. We can say also that their growing is expected by the important advantages that they are providing for the brand or for the firm which is promoting this brand, and for the users which are interested in the topic which has been addressed in these virtual communities. From an academical point of view, we can say that a virtual community is a social group developed in the internet, in which users employ the internet for developing the main discussions. We are talking about virtual communities, but we have to signal, we have to punctualize that the term virtual do not imply that these communities are not existing in reality. In fact, the information which has been addressed in this context is being used by the people in the real life, taking their decision of consumption. So from this point of view, we can argue that virtual community is not something which is happening in the imagination of the people, but also we can say that virtual communities are real entities which are existing and which are efforts in the real world. The only one difference is that the way in which people establish their relationships is mainly on the internet. Well, the difference between virtual communities and traditional communities, which has been existing since the beginning of the time, is that virtual communities, they are using mainly, primarily as a communication media, the internet. But they have other advantages important to point it out, is that consumers can interact in different places and consumer can overcome the time barrier. So I can give an answer to a message which has been posted a couple of weeks ago by someone else. So it's important to notice this advantage as well. Well, a virtual community could be integrated by a set of users which interact to satisfy their needs, which are a purpose or an interest or a need or whatever. They have a policy which guides their relationships, and they use the internet for their communications ways. So we can say that there is many different kinds of virtual social networks. So following this, we can go further analyzing the topic of the virtual brand community, which is even more interesting from a marketing point of view. Well, frequently communities are being sponsored by specific brands, specific firms, which are interested in knowing what the people think about the product, and the people ask questions through some specific forums, and they develop these virtual communities. Brand communities have three main characteristics, such as conscious of akin, rituals and traditions, and sense of moral responsibility. Characteristics that we are not going to analyze. We are not going to spend so much time because we have many things to say. Well, virtual brand communities, it's a set of individuals related on the internet, mainly in relation to a product or a brand, because are especially interested in talking about this particular topic. Well, nowadays it is clear the interest by the researchers, by the marketers on the topics of the virtual communities, and especially the marketing possibilities. So what we can learn, what we can advance using these virtual communities. However, as I said, I'm here in order to say that in my view, there is still some topics that should be analyzed with more detail in this case. So I would like to suggest that we need to go further analyzing topics such as some topics that I am going to talk about. So first of all, I would like to say that there is a lot of papers, we have published several of them, in which people is talking about the importance of virtual communities and which are the characteristics and how can we learn things from them. Also, there is a lot of papers talking about how can we take advantages of virtual communities, or how can we monetize the traffic from virtual communities. However, there is some topics remaining of interest. Between those topics, I would like to suggest that it is important to go further in the analysis of consumer digital identities in virtual communities. Also, it's important to go further understanding the patterns of the rules which are conducting the behavior of people in these virtual communities. Also, we need to know how to promote the participation in these virtual communities. Otherwise, if people is not participating, virtual community has definitely death. Also, we need to know which different kind of people is participating in virtual community. Are all the same, or in different virtual communities are different kind of users? How can we manage this diversity of people? And also, I would like to talk finally about the consumerist movements and a phenomenon which I found very interesting and that I have not seen many papers published on it. And it's the phenomenon of anti-brown virtual community, which is something that always happened and could be happening with time more and more. Well, so those are the main questions in which I would like to focus my attention. So, talking about the importance of virtual community, we can say that if we pay attention how do we spend the time that we spend on the internet, we can say that our recent studies say that 38% of the time that we are spending on the internet, we're spending this time in communication activities, 22% in information activities, and 70% in entertainment activities. So they are the three main activities in which we invest more times on the internet. I have to say that all these three activities is the activities in which we can spend more time on, also on virtual social networks, because all of them, there are topics very frequently addressed in these virtual social networks. Well, I would like to start saying that if we pay attention to the different information sources and the preferences of consumers for these different information sources, we can find, for example, a recent study conducted in the USA, in which people has been asked about which were the most trustable information sources. And the people say, well, the most trustable information sources are, first of all, the friends' recommendations, email promotion that you have signed up, you have been asking for information, this kind of information, and regular TV advertising. And opposite to this, we have another information sources that consumers prefer to eliminate. And here we have the pop-ups and interstitial of the internet. People really dislike this. The telemarketing, because they call you when you are having lunch. Also the email promotions that you never have signed up. So that is the spam. So it's curious to see this opposition between if you sign it up and if you do not sign it up. Well, we can talk about now word of mouth. So we can say that for marketing purchase decision, consumer prefers the informal sources of information, and the previous information has confirmed this point of view. So people want to know what the other consumers can say to them in order to take their own decision of consumption. And consumers trust less the information of organizational sources, such as the advertising campaigns. So why word of mouth is extremely effective? Well, the primary reason which could explain that is that the informant has nothing to gain from my actions. He's not having paid for this because I trust my friend and I trust that he has nothing to do with my decision. He only wants to recommend me in order to take the best decision. So consequently, I consider my friends, my family, a more objective source of information. Well, there is another video that I am not going to put as well because we do not have time, But at the beginning, I was thinking to put all these videos. But I would like to recommend you, because this video has 60 million of visits, 60 million of visits. So it's a video of somebody who has been traveling to South Africa, in which there was a national park in which there was a lot of bulls running, running around. There came the lions and take the baby bull, okay? Different lions finishing trying to kill the baby bull, but they do not they do not do it. But they go to the river, come the crocodile in order to take the bull. Finally, the lions take the bull. Finally, the bulls come back in order to defend the baby, and the baby goes out with the family. Okay, so it's very, very interesting, and it's the best way in which we can promote the Kruger Park in South Africa, because somebody has been recording this, and somebody has been as a tourist there, and I have seen there. Perhaps I'm not going to see it, but if I see this as a promotional advertising campaign of the Kruger Park, I'm going to think, well, this is impossible. It's not currently happening to me anyway. Okay, but in this case, people is trusting, and everybody is watching these videos, so it's very, very interesting. So that explains why consumers can appreciate consumer word of mouth, because word of mouth is considered more reliable and most trustable sources of information that we can find. Well, talking about word of mouth, we can say that firms are incorporating this word of mouth to the models of campaigns or having contact with the consumer. It's more and more frequently that companies are contacting, first of all, with the opinion leaders in order to transmit the information about a new device which are going to launch, and later on to the global market. So they make publicity and they make advertising directly from these people who is later going to do word of mouth. And this is very, very important topic because, for example, in some kind of industries, such as it could be the hospitality or travel industry that has a lot of importance, how many people is giving advice? So is anybody in this room that never has been given any recommendation about restaurants? So 47% of the people has been giving recommendation about restaurants, about hotels, about whatever. So we are always talking, giving advice to our friends and our family. So talking about this, I would like to say also that internet is changing the way in which commercial communication is being developed. At the beginning, the advertiser gives the message directly to the consumer. With the development of the internet, initially at the beginning, we have been using the internet as another medium of communication. We put our advertising at the beginning in the website and people read it. But later on, consumer has been conscious that they can interchange information directly between themselves. The result of this was the development of forums in which there is several consumers talking about different topics, and also there is an advertiser or several advertisers which are participating in these new forums. So this has been the beginning of virtual social networks. So, however, we have to say that virtual social networks has been evolved very substantially during the last years. So, at the beginning, we have seen the development of very generalistic social networks, in which people, they were talking about things because they have similar interests in some specific things. But with time, things has been changing, and that we have now is that the virtual social networks are focusing the attention, for example, in specific business areas. And for example, in the travel sector, we can find a lot of social networks, such as TripAdvisor or Lonely Planet, in which people is talking about, oh, my last travel to Egypt, my last travel to Japan, and so on, talking about different experiences. Also, we can find in software industries and so on. Also, these virtual communities focus the attention in specific brands or specific products, such as, for example, the virtual social networks of Apple or the Canonist from Canon. There are social networks developed on topics such as knowledge. The Wikipedia, it's a clear example. Yahoo Answers. virtual social networks developed in product and service reviews, social networks developed in publication of information, and so on. So we can say that there is social networks which has clear purposes or clear objectives. We can find social networks for example, socializing. We can find social networks for example, to develop, to have a better career development. We can find social networks to soulmate, to meet a partner, or we can find social networks to get in back with all friends or people of the school. And also we can find more complex classifications, social networks as expression, publication, profession, knowledge such as Wikipedia, Yahoo Answers, the audience, to purchase things. Well, there is a lot of virtual communities different between themselves. And obviously in these virtual communities, people is giving different kind of information. And between this kind of information, I would like to talk about the consumer identities, consumer digital identities, because quite probably we are giving different information in the different virtual social networks about ourselves. It is evident that virtual social networks are focusing on different topics, and for these topics are important some parts of my personality, not others. Okay, so we can talk about the concept of digital identity. From an academical point of view, digital identity could be understood as a set of characteristics offered by one digital subject about itself or about other people, but which are referred to a person which exists in the real world. Digital identity is a very interesting concept because it is different to the real identity. My real identity is my ID card or my information that I put in my curriculum. But here in the digital identity has some differences, has three main particularities. So first of all, we have to talk about the fragmentation of this identity. Why? Because I'm giving different pieces of my information in different social networks, because it's not necessary to give all of them. And in fact, in some cases could be not coherent. It happens as well. Also, the fantasy, because the identity of the people could be fantasized. So I can invent some of my characteristics. Nobody knows. And finally, the temporality. The question is that identity do not change. So if I say something with my acronym in the virtual social network, this information will remain there for years. And also my profile will remain there, okay, unless I change or they decide to remove or close the virtual community, but it is not frequent. So considering these characteristics, we have to say that, for example, users obviously manage their identity according that the functionalities which are being offered by the virtual social networks. For example, let's take an example in order to see how it could be different in one's cases to another's. Well, let's take the case of Facebook against MySpace. What is it for MySpace? MySpace is mainly a social network in which I try to be in contact with people. I'm trying to give some traits of my personality, but which are quite probably not the most important characteristics of myself. I'm talking about for example, my interest for music. And I'm trying to meet people in the virtual social networks, trying to say things from myself. I'm having this page in MySpace. I like this kind of music, and I'm giving you this information about myself. It's more monologue. However, and the identity is more fantasized. Contrary to this, what is happening in Facebook? In Facebook, the information is much more realistic. And in fact, when you open the page of MySpace, the first that it opens is the music. You start to hear the music which these people likes. But in Facebook, it's not frequent to have music, but the information about the real identity of the people is more clear. What I'm trying here is not to meet new people, which is the case of MySpace. What I'm trying here is to try to extend my contacts, the contacts of people that I have in the real world, to the network. And what I'm trying to do here is to try to establish a dialogue. So I'm saying, I'm doing this. Are you interested in going? And people is giving me answers. It's more dynamic, it's more dialogue, not a monologue. So this is the case of MySpace. So obviously the user digital identity depends of different things. For example, we can classify the different social networks depending on until what extent the personality of the people is fantasized or is realistic, or we can classify until what extent the information that I'm giving in these virtual social networks is to the general people or to specific people. For example, we can have in both extremes the case of MySpace and Facebook. But for example, let's pay attention to other networks. For example, as is the case of LinkedIn. In LinkedIn, I'm trying to give information, relatively real information about me, because it's for commercial purposes, but I'm not trying to give this information to everybody. I'm trying to give this information to some specific people in which, with which I can have business relationships. Well, people which is in my knowledge area and so on. Or for example, perhaps it's more clear the example of Metic. Metic, I'm segmenting the half of the market. I'm just looking for, well, I'm not looking for anything because I'm married. So first of all, if it was the case, I was looking for a woman which has some specific characteristics. And obviously, I'm not going to say all my characteristics. Okay, so it's not so realistic. Okay, don't tell anyone. Okay, so in relation to this, we can say that a particular consumer can be involved simultaneously in different virtual communities. For example, we can be involved in a virtual community in order to search professional contacts, such as LinkedIn, to get back involved with our friends, such as Facebook, to socialize, such as MySpace, to find a partner, such as Metic, to sell something, a second-hand product, such as eBay. What I can tell you is that probably the image of digital identity transmitted in those virtual communities will be clear or different. That's clear, that should be different. Obviously, will be much more serious in LinkedIn. Obviously, you have to trust me. You have to trust me. If I'm talking with my friends in Facebook, the image will be more informal, and obviously, will be more cool in MySpace and will be more attractive in Metic, otherwise I'm not going to success. Okay, so the topic of digital identity is an interesting topic that should be analyzed. Why? Because much of our consumer behavior involves some degree of self-reflection about who we are or who should be seen by the rest of the people. Consumers can adopt multiple identities, and it is evident that they are adopting depending on the consumption context and the social environment. It is not the same if I am talking with the people who is working for me, that if I am talking with the people who is at my level, or if I am talking with my boss. You use a kind of speaking completely different in all these situations. Well, from a marketing point of view, we can say that we can identify different segments, different market segments, using different characteristics, such as the gender, nationality, social class, and so on. But what they have found, the market researchers recently, it is that it is more interesting to identify different groups of people in terms of the personality. And for example, it would be interesting to classify people in terms of moral values. I'm a bad boy, or I'm a good boy, I'm a good person, or what I am. I'm a mother, I'm a consumer, I'm a boss. So what's my role in the society? But those consumers' identity might refer to who I am currently, how I used to be, who I should be, or how is expected that I should behave. And obviously, all of them reflect and fit a self-identification process. Well, from this point of view of consumer digital identity, it should be interesting to identify the antecedents of the activation of consumer identities in social and marketing environment, the mental organization of these multiple identities of the people, and the implications from a point of marketing. Well, I can say that if you're interested in this topic, you have time to submit a paper to this special issue, which is being conducted nowadays in the International Journal of Research in Marketing. So that it highlights the interest of the topic. Well, Secondly, I would like to talk about the patterns of the rules of behavior in these virtual communities. Well, I have to say, first of all, that there is a sophisticated set of rules of expected behavior between members in a virtual community. In general, members expect to see interesting information and an adequate and respectful behavior of the people. If the quality of the information is going down, or if you see respectful comments, people is starting to leave the virtual community. This is important. This is important because frequently one of the main reasons of problems or the closing of virtual communities is the flame wars. The flame wars, which leads to the criticism and even the direct insults between parts. When flame wars appears, the people who are managing virtual communities has several strategies to follow. Well, the first strategy could be peer pressure. Other members ask to stay in their comments, or moderator pressure. You advise. The moderator advises to the people, stop this behavior, otherwise will be fired. The third step is firing these people who is having a bad behavior. But here is interesting to know which will be the behavior of the firms which are taking part in virtual communities. Well, here we have to say that the behavior of the virtual community of the firm in the virtual communities depends on the situation and the area of the virtual community in which we are now. So, talking about this, we have to say that we can distinguish three main areas in which the expected behavior is clearly different. So, first area could be the discussion forums. So, here members discuss about the main topic of the virtual community area. Members expect no commercial interaction here. Okay, just in case, you can do it if you are a firm, if you are giving a direct answer to a question that has been proposed first by somebody in the virtual community. But firms has to be very prudent because they can lose very fast their trust, the consumer trust, and to grow up consumer trust is very, very difficult. Second area is the marketplace. The marketplace where firms and individuals can offer and sell to the members of the community different kind of things. Here is expected some commercial behavior. So here we can give information clearly to some members of the market. And finally, there is another place which is a forum paid by commercial sponsors. Here, obviously, it is expected much more commercial activities. Frequently, with this a third party which is managing the virtual community, to have some sponsor in different areas gives more value to the community. And also, if it is the own company which is having a sponsor in the whole community, obviously the question is that it is not going to allow to competitors to come inside the virtual community. Well, in general, those rules are relatively strict in each area. However, in my view, more research is needed in order to know exactly which are the limits, because for companies it will be more interesting to know exact limits of behavior in different areas. So what can I do? What can a sponsor do, or how can I try to have the information, not making reluctant comments against my company? So I think it's a very, very interesting research lying here, which will be definitely developed in the following years in the topic on virtual communities. Well, also I would like to talk about the promotion of users' participation in virtual communities. Well, obviously, members' participation in virtual communities is essential for the success of virtual communities. A virtual community is mainly this. A lot of people which is participating, saying different things about the virtual community. Managers make a great effort in line developing strategies such as the three following strategies. The first strategy is member development. So we need to develop different roles in the people who is participating in these virtual communities. We need to identify potential members. We need to clarify which are the contexts in which we are going to talk about in these virtual social networks. We need define the tools and the service that we are going to use in order to make work in this virtual community. The second strategy is the management of assets. Which are the assets of a virtual community? It's a very, very interesting question. Well, mainly the assets of the virtual communities are the content generated internally, externally, and externally, because the information is the important question in virtual community. The alliances, which has been established with other groups, because they could share information complementary to a virtual community. Obviously, the knowledge and experience of the people who is participating in this virtual community, the community infrastructures, so the software, the hardware, and so on. But what is more important is the compromise of people who is giving information and asking for information in this virtual community is one of the main assets, the compromise of the people. What can we do with these assets? So how can we manage? We can create members' profiles, create sub-communities of people. Well, it's interesting to see a community of people talking about traveling. But the question is that I am going to travel to Egypt, so I would like to talk specifically with people who is going to Egypt. I'm interested, very interested in going to Russia, but I'm not going to Russia. So we need to develop several sub-communities talking about the several subgroups, subtopics, and we need to organize all this information. We need to maintain a balance between expert members and novice. Obviously, people is interchanges information. There's people who has not many information on the topic and is learning, and there's another kind of people who is giving information to the rest, which has a very big background, who is compensating the lack of knowledge of the others. But they have also very good compromise with the community. To make easy, accessible the information, one of the problems of the internet is that we cannot find information. There is an overflow of information here. And we need to promote the discussions and other forms of contribution between members. So the third strategy is to promote relationships. The main reasons to participate in virtual communities are interactions with people. In virtual community, conflict is welcome. Several kinds of conflicts is welcome, because otherwise there is no discussion between members. And managing this community involves try to tend in connection between those parts which are discussing. Quite probably with somebody is discussing with another part, the question is that they are watching the same problem from different perspectives, and quite probably they have both, they are in the right direction both. So just watching the problem from different point of view. Virtual community managers promote different links also of social interactions, and this is especially interesting because, for example, well, we have to say that people in virtual community can make relations being in different places and even with different times. But sometimes virtual community members are promoting the participation in some specific moment in the time. So tomorrow is the 25th anniversary of virtual community. We are going to have a direct chat, all the members of the community. Or even they make activities which overcome the virtual situation. They have face-to-face meetings in order to cement the relationship which has been established on the internet. And this is very, very interesting activity as well. So here I understand that we need to go further and to confirm more things. And we need to confirm the quantity and effectiveness of these strategies to promote participation and search for alternatives to increase participation in virtual communities. Okay, another research line that I would like to talk about is the type of users in virtual communities and how to manage them. Well, the question is, are there different profiles of people in virtual communities? Are we all the same, or we can find clear differences between people? Well, here we can talk about the research made by Consumerist. Well, this guy is one of the promoters of the research of virtual communities in the past, and has made very, very interesting studies about these topics, which has not been addressed later by future researchers, which is surprising for me. Well, what he say is that we can find 4 different kinds of users in a virtual community. So we can find, first of all, tourists. The tourists have a determined interest in the activity. being analyzed in the virtual community, but they have a lack of strong social connections between other members of the social network. It is people that frequently they used to read a lot of in the virtual community, and frequently or occasionally they just post some questions. Another kind of users are the minglers. Minglers, they have strong social connections, but they have a minimal interest in the consumption of activities which are being conducted in the social networks. Also, we have a third group which are called devotees, which has a strong consumption interest but few social connections with the online group. And finally, we have the insiders. They have a strong social connection to the online group and a strong interest in the consumption activity. They tend to be long-stayed members, and they are frequently references because their opinion is very important in the community. Well, are all these members of the community as important as the rest, or there are members which are more interesting for managers in virtual communities? Well, the answer is clear. We have to say that the insiders and devotees members are enthusiastic, actively involved, sophisticated users of the products of the virtual community. Insiders and devotees are the most important data sources for marketing research and for marketing strategy formulation. So, in conclusion, we have to say that managers are very interested in trying to transform tourists and minglers in insiders and devotees, because are the most interesting group of people in both communities. Obviously, we always in a virtual community will need tourists and minglers, because that's the way of incorporating new people in the virtual community. Okay, however, in this case, in my view, we need to know how we can transform these minglers and tourists in insiders and devotees. We need to study more deeply both types of consumers, and we need to understand the consumer behavior of each group. How can we change the role of these members in the virtual community? Finally, I would like to talk about a very interesting research line which establishes a clear relationship between the consumerist movements and the development of anti-brand virtual communities. Well, let's talk about the consumerist movements. Well, it is possible to identify three main, well, traditionally it has been possible to identify three main youth consumerist movements. So, traditionally it says that these movements has been happening at the beginning of 90s, in the mid of 30s, and in the mid of 60s. Obviously, consumerist movements has been arising during economic or social crisis, when prices has been rising and consumers has been going down their power, because consumers has found that if they are together, they can have more power and solve some problems. Well, nowadays we can say that it is arising another movement, another kind of consumerist movement, and this movement is not like the other consumerist movements that it has been in the past. So this movement is being developed mainly on the internet. They are very active using the new technologies against some specific brands, or against some specific values, or against some specific ways of behavior. In fact, we can say that consumers are using these new technologies with the aim of developing anti-consumerist movements. Internet is changing the way in which these movements are going to be developed, and the way in which people is participating in this social action. Consumers are opposed to the global brands and expressing concerns about corporate practices related to problems, environmental problems, or related to problems of rights of women, rights of workers, human rights. So they are using these new technologies with this aim. So, and one of the results of this new movement are the anti-brands virtual communities. Brands, we can say, that can symbolize as well the negative perceptions of different things in the society. These perceptions are associated with corporations, specifically with some specific brands. obviously, the antithesis of the virtual community is the anti-brand virtual community. The anti-brand communities are being formed because there is a common aversion of people which are distant in geographical places, different geographical places, but they share a value. It's the opposition to a brand, is the opposition to a value, is the opposition to some way of behavior. Here we can find anti-brand communities which could oppose to specific brands, such as the case of McDonald's, the anti-brand community. Also to corporate brands, such as the brand which is opposing anti-brand community, which is opposing to Walmart or Procter & Gamble. Well, an important question is why arises this anti-brand virtual community? Well, a first reason could be the common moral obligations. So let me read something that it will be very graphical of the opinion of these people. I cannot ignore what McDonald's is doing with our own environment, our children, and our future. I have to be an activist because I will feel guilty otherwise. So the second is to provide support network to achieve common goals. So the case is I connect with other anti-Starbucks people online. We rely on each other for support because, as you know, most people I talk on the street are influenced by Starbucks. So it's people that understand that the Starbucks is the origin of all the negative things. Another reason is to express workplace difficulties. We have here to explain that explaining difficulties is a major motivation of anti-brand members. And especially, we have to say that an important part of these members of anti-brand communities is people who is working for these companies, and they are expressing things against this company. Fourth reason is to provide resources for taking action. Sharing resources is an important aim for anti-brand communities. For example, the anti-Starbucks web community has been created to publicize the negative practice of Starbucks. So what do? They just to publicize negative market situations or market inequalities. They publicize unethical marketing tactics or corporate actions. They are also informing fellow members about the rewards of having a restrictive lifestyle. I'm not going to be like the rest of the people. I want to be different, and I do not want to be guided by the market. I am different to them. Or constructing new identities. So it's as an opposition to the prefabricated identities which has been given by the companies. Well, obviously the influence of these new technologies in these consumerist movements is very clear and very important. What are they doing? Why is this important? Because the speed. Obviously when the events occurs, the community members can be updated instantly, or the community members not need longer to go to traditional ways of communication because they can do it on the internet. The convenience. Internet makes the participation, the information share, and the identification of people who is interested in this more easy. The community formation, they really in each other, being members of this community. The anonymity, because as we say before, a lot of members which are in these anti-brands communities are working for this brand, and obviously his boss should not know this, otherwise they will be fired. In conclusion, the internet is also increasing the activist strategies of consumers against companies on the internet, which is a very interesting point as well. So we can say that it is evident that consumerist movements, it's a reality nowadays. We cannot ignore this reality. So we need to know how can we avoid this behavior as a brand. What should be the role of this virtual community in developing these, or avoiding to developing these virtual communities which are against this brand. Perhaps it is better to develop our virtual community in order to avoid this, or it would be useful to monitor consumers' opinion in different virtual communities. What can we do in relation to this? Well, it is clear that the potential role of virtual community of the development of consumer complaint management models. Here, an important topic will be to identify which will be the ways in which virtual community can allow us to solve these problems, to solve this dissatisfaction, and try to identify through the virtual communities in order to try to solve on time and not having this problem. Well, as conclusion, I would like to say that the internet in general and the virtual communities in particular are a new environment which has been received with very, very substantial attention from marketing research. But in my view, there is several points, different points, which needs a detailed analysis, which still needs a detailed analysis, which are consumer digital identities in social networks, patterns, rules of behavior in virtual communities, how to promote users' participation in virtual communities, types of users in virtual communities, how can we manage them, consumerist movements and anti-brand virtual communities. That's all that I would like to say, and I hope many of you go further in this research line from AEMARK. Thank you very much.